Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Microsoft 365 Business Boost podcast. I'm one half of your host, Thurman Trotman. I'm here with my guy, Nick DeCourcy. Nick, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Look, I'm great, Nick. You know what I mean? It's rare that I'm ever going to say that I'm not great because, any day above ground, the sun is shining, all this good stuff. You know what I mean? I'm very grateful. So I'm doing great. Now, listen, I wanted to talk about signatures, wet signatures versus, I was going to say dry signatures, but digital signatures. so, a little earlier last week, maybe, I was talking to somebody about a solution that I'm providing on SharePoint. And one of the things that they mentioned was, hey, you might want to consider policies that are documents because someone still has to sign them. And that's normal stuff. But what happened was the reason that even came up is because what I demoed to her had policies not in documents. Instead, they were policies on page. So with these policies, what normally happens is someone has to download the physical document, sign it, and then scan it back into a system so that people can, when they access the document, they can see that there's a physical signature on there that proves this person signed it. Cool. In case anybody's wondering what a wet signature is, really you would do it with a pen, and that's what they mean. So you'd make the signature, but by the time you scan it into somewhere, it's no longer wet. It's like a digital version of that signature.
Depending on whether you're using a fountain pen or, a rollable pen, how wet it is varies. But at some point, it was ink going on a page.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
I also digitize employee handbooks for folks, and one of the customers, a couple customers recently, they want people to acknowledge the last page of the handbook, and so I would take the last page and make it a button on a SharePoint page that someone clicks, so they could again download this, sign it, send it to wherever it needs to go. Now, in a digital form, let's say a SharePoint form, I can capture this information without having someone sign, without having someone break out a pen and sign. So here's the difference. In the old school way, you download, sign it, scan it, get it back into the system, email it to wherever it needs to go. Or maybe someone says, hey, don't do all that. Just upload it to this one library. So you download it, you sign it, then you upload it into a library. Now, that even seems like a big lift because there's a lot of people who don't have printers. So they're not going to, where are they supposed to download and sign? So I guess you would have to run to a library, print the physical paper.
You mean like in the work from home thing, less people have a printer close by?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Download it from the library, sign it, do all this stuff, right? A whole lot to do. And even if you are working in the office, there's still some extra steps there with downloading, printing, signing, scanning back in, and then, uploading somewhere. So does it work? Yeah, it works. But here's the difference. Matter of fact, anyone who has used DocuSign or has used a PDF with a CAC, like a common access card, which is, familiar with the government, what a digital signature is. But I'm taking it beyond this, and I'm like, when you use SharePoint knows who you are. So any and everything that you do on SharePoint is capturing what you're doing because it knows who has logged into the system. So if you click something, if you submit something, if you edit something, SharePoint knows you're doing it. So my thinking is at the end of a document, you can put a checkbox that says something like, click here to acknowledge that you XYZ, whatever. And when you do that and hit submit, I can see that you did that. Like the system will tell me you're the person who filled this form out and submitted it. You did all of this stuff. So my thought process is digital signatures are way more reliable and way more powerful than the wet signatures. So why are these companies still using or relying so heavily on the wet signatures? And I'm trying to again, it's never any judgment. Even though I look at that as like an old school practice, I'm never going to be like, hey, you need to stop doing that. I need cases. I need reasons as to why you're doing that for me to then determine if it's even like still a thing. So what say you, Nick? Where are you at on the wet signature versus digital signature?
Well, I mean, I think the question is, are the people or the departments that are involved in wanting to capture that information actually that aware of what authenticating into, say, Microsoft 365 actually shows? You know, I think those are two different worlds, right? And the world where being logged into your computer or being logged into your phone, going through MFA, whatever that may be, the world of what that shows now isn't that older world. It's not like we've been in that position for decades at this point. Like I remember at the start of my career, there wasn't that much problem in being a lot more laissez-faire with, you know, someone wants to do something quick on a computer, just let them sit down while you're logged in and do something. You know, these kinds of things, like things that are very big no-nos now in most organisations, weren't the case a while ago. And if you're an HR leader or a procurement leader or something like that, and you're not immersed in this world every day, you're just someone who is logging into a computer as you have done for the last 20, 25 years of your career, are you actually aware that that authentication process is demonstrating that you are 100% who you say you are, as opposed to just it's a body sitting in front of a computer that's turned on?
So again, here we go with education, where the person who comes from maybe an older generation thinks nothing will ever match the power of my pen to paper. So you can come with this digital stuff, but you know, I don't believe that it's as valuable as me putting a pen to a paper, which they've been doing for years. You're saying that maybe the gap is education, and possibly if they knew, then we would get more people on board with digital signatures?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think the problem is, Thurman, that it depends on what you think is secure, right? Like personally, I don't really think that signing a piece of paper and scanning it and uploading it somewhere shows you anything other than that paper was uploaded by the person who it says uploaded that document. It doesn't genuinely show you with 100% certainty that that's that person's signature. Like it could say Mickey Mouse for all you know. You're not checking that. So what actually, when the rubber hits the road, there's an issue, right? What are you actually going to look at there? If the contract says Mickey Mouse on it instead of the person's name, are you going to look at the history of who uploaded that to SharePoint and say, hey, it was you? And ultimately that becomes the digital signature, right? Because you uploaded the file. That's your file. You did it. So I think there's lots of ways of cutting this. The idea that, okay, we're going to shortcut this because we might have a 50-page employee handbook. So we don't want to print the whole thing because we don't want to, you know, go through a tree a day. So we're just going to print the last page and sign that. But if you're an employee, how does that protect you to say that the version of the HR handbook or whatever it might be that your employer says is the version now was the version that you saw and you signed all those years ago? How do you know that if all you're doing is signing the last page? Are you checking it to see that there's version control in there? Are they genuinely updating that version on that page every time they update the handbook? So really, if you want to be 100%, you need to print out the entire handbook, you need to initial every page, and you need to scan that entire thing. That's the only way that you can be 100% sure that the document that you read and you authorised is the one that is being used. So I think there's a lot of concerns about this. You know, sometimes you say to people, well, where is the copy of the agreement that you signed? And they did it digitally, and they no longer have it because the platform that they use to sign it is controlled by a third party. And so
Right.
I have all of my documents in DocuSign, say, and I make the decision today I'm going to move over to SharePoint e-signature, and I get rid of that DocuSign account. I don't actually know what happens to all of those documents. Can my clients still go and find that document if they log into their account? I don't honestly know. So I think there's a lot of considerations with this that transcend just thinking about, well, do I want a wet signature or a digital signature? It's about the process and what the value of that signature is, and ultimately the value is in the document and whether you need to do something with it as time goes on.
Yeah, you just made me think of an idea. Like, let's say the 50-page employee handbook. Maybe there's a policy in there on, how to report another employee for doing something, right? So there's some detailed steps on how to do it. When you first got there in 2024 of June and you did your orientation, you signed and said, I have read the book. You did just digitally in my way. You checked the box. We captured you capturing that box. We know what date you did it. We know what time you did it. Good to go. Now, the whole 50-page handbook doesn't get updated. But this policy about reporting people, this does get updated. And then when you update it, when the person that updates it, they say, hey, they send out an email. New handbook, or this handbook page has been updated. Here's the changed information. If you want to see an older version, you can look here. Please acknowledge that you have read the new verbiage. Basically, the updates we get on these apps we use. So I'm sitting here right now and I just got a feature idea for these companies. I could be like, listen, we can make it so that when you update these documents, that we make the employees, acknowledge that they have read and accepted the new terms. This is something you can do when you're going digital. You know what I'm saying? And I like this. This is a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think that kind of automation. I mean, a lot of HR systems will have that kind of automation in it. But if it's something that you can do with, Microsoft 365 with SharePoint, I mean, all those capabilities are there. We just saw this week it was announced that SharePoint e-signature is going to come to Word files. So you're going to be able to do stuff in Word as opposed to having to create PDFs. It makes all this stuff easier. I mean, the piece of having to automate for all your employees out of SharePoint e-signature, I don't think that's quite there yet. There isn't a robust set of APIs around creating those requests, but for companies like DocuSign, I think there are. So you can automate a lot of that stuff. I think the key thing that I would say is that what we have lost in the digital landscape with doing this, that perhaps we had with the paper landscape of doing this, is that in general, back in the days where everything would get signed on paper, or even today, if you go buy a house or something like that, you sign twice because you're signing once for the copy that you're going to retain, and you sign again for the copy that you're going to hand over to the other person that's in that transaction. And there is no ambiguity at that point that both parties have signed and you've both got a copy of that record. What gets lost in the digital age is, do both parties have a copy of that record? And whichever side you're thinking of, if it's a business dispute that you run into and you need a copy of the agreement that you signed, if the company that you're disputing with has control over that digital document, then how valid is the history of that document? I mean, there are ways of tracking back that it hasn't been changed, but fundamentally that's the case. If you're an employee, on the day that you get called into that HR meeting, assuming that all your documents are stored in the HR system, when you try to log into the system to try to check that the policy they're reading from is the same one that you signed 5 years ago, you're probably going to find you don't have access to log in and find that anymore. So how are you going to check that? How are you going to check back what's going on? So I do think that one of the things that you get with the paper process, Thurman, is this idea that both parties in a transaction always have their own copy of the files related to that transaction that they are able to manage. And we don't quite with all of these scenarios, have a way of doing that right now. I mean, most of them will send you an email copy of it, but, you know, particularly if you're using your business email to sign something that is related to the business that you work in, that's not really giving you a copy of it, that's giving your business 2 copies of it.
Yeah. I think that's a good point you raise, but I also feel like it's 2025 and we're getting further and further away from what used to be normal for people around our age. For instance, this case that you're talking about, years ago, when I had Comcast, so this isn't even recent. Years ago when I had Comcast, I had the ability to, quote, buy a movie. I bought a movie for my son. It was Cars. The first one, pretty good movie, you know what I mean? I bought the movie, so now it was in my account. But I quit being with Comcast years ago because they are... I quit being with Comcast years ago, and I thought I purchased that movie. If I, quote, purchased the movie, previously, if I purchased the movie, I could prove to you I have the movie. I have the physical movie, the disc is inside of it, I have the movie. It's in my house.
But you just got a license. You bought a license for it.
I don't think I bought a license. I definitely did not buy the physical version, and I don't think I bought the license. Because what is that? If I bought the license, what is that license? What is the value of that license to me today as I'm no longer with Comcast?
Nothing.
What did I purchase?
So that's how the modern world works, Thurman.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't own anything.
Right. So now we have to shift the mindset from, hey, I need a copy for myself, just like you're going to have a copy for yourself, to instead, at the time that I do my digital signature, you mentioned it, I should get an email with all of the details of what I signed, or I should get an email of the copy of the document, which I think DocuSign does, or DocuSign, it gives you the ability to download. I should get something that's that's also a digital confirmation of what I did, because that's the best that I could, that's efficient, if you will, in the modern world, is that I can get a digital version of my proof.
Correct. But let me put this out here. So one of the things with a lot of HR systems is that the email contact or the contact information of record in the HR system is the user's personal contact details. So when something needs to be sent out, it gets sent out to the home address, or it gets sent out to the personal email address. The benefit of doing that is that transaction, whatever it is then owned both by the user, the employee, and by the company, because it's got... But if you do something within SharePoint, if you do the same thing within SharePoint, you're not going to add each of those individuals as a guest. In fact, I think if you have them working as a guest within your environment or their personal email, then you're violating the terms of the license. I may be wrong on that because they're already licensed in there, but I think that would require 2 separate licenses. You're not allowed to have employees be guests. So the problem with doing that kind of thing within the wrapper of the business is, how does that employee ever get the copy? Because do you want them just emailing whatever they have within their... Do you want to normalize you're just going to take something that's in your business inbox and send it to your personal email address? Okay, we'll look another way for this one because this is your thing, but how do you keep a check on that? If you allow that and that becomes a normal thing within your environment, that every time you're getting something from the HR department, you just forward it to yourself, then that becomes a security concern within your environment. So I do think the more that I'm thinking about what you're saying of wrapping this within SharePoint, the more that I see, are there other concerns that you create by wrapping this kind of process in SharePoint, because you want SharePoint to be your corporately owned data that doesn't get shared outside of the business unless it's for a specific business purpose?
Right. So, I mean, again, if we think with the updated mindset, the day of now what belongs to us is our OneDrive, right? So OneDrive belongs to us, but ultimately belongs to the organization. So here's your in. Your in is that I signed this thing, but it's not okay for me to take it off of our environment. What I can do is make it mine inside of our environment, and that's the strongest version of that file that I have. So on December 1st, 2024, I know what I downloaded. There's a record of what I downloaded, or not downloaded, but I moved to my OneDrive, and this counts as the thing. So that's the one that I've downloaded at that time, and I have a copy of it.
But so isn't the problem with that, Thurman, that if you're the employee and you need that copy, like it's something to do with your conduct within your job or your requirements with that, by the time it becomes a necessity to you to know that you have that copy, a lot of the time you're no longer going to have access to it.
Right.
So that's the downside of that is OneDrive is your thing, but advocating that OneDrive is your thing, it's not actually true. Right? All of that stuff is the business's data, and if something is truly yours, I'm dealing with this situation right now where through a number of misconfigurations, one of the people I've been working with just mentioned to me that something that's come up in their environment is that the way their OneDrives have been set up, all of their personal files are syncing into the business environment, and it's not a big deal because it's like a small business and it's owned by the person who this is a problem for. But still, if you're working for a corporation and you have a business phone and you're taking photos, personal photos, and they're syncing up to the environment, or you're planning your wedding and you're taking some notes and they're syncing up to the corporate environment, that stuff isn't yours. So understanding this kind of demarcation between the personal and the business is really important.
Yeah, I'm with you, but here's the. I'm a lob it back over to you with this. Do you think that if I signed some policy that belonged to it originated with the organization, and they also said that I can't take it off the environment, if I do, it's null and void or something like that, but I do get to keep it in my OneDrive, and I don't listen to them and I take it off the environment, and then I get screwed 2 years later and we're in court, that I can't use the one that I took offline? I feel like there's a way for me to still use that one that I took offline and protect myself if I got a good lawyer to protect me, because what protection did I have to begin with if I don't even have a way to prove that I have the original document that we signed? This is a very gray and scary area because, to your point, we at least used to have both copies. So if it's in now the situation where I'm signing and it's staying on the OneDrive and I can't take it off the environment, there needs to be something somewhere that says I need a caveat, because what if I don't take it off the environment and then I get screwed? What do I use as my defense, if you will? You know what I'm saying? I don't have anything. So there has to be, this is null and void unless being used in a court of law or whatever. I don't know. Some lawyer speak that allows me to defend myself, because what other way do I have to defend myself if I'm giving over all of the control to the organization to keep up documents?
That's the point, isn't it? And I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to the legal side of it, but I would also say that if I'm being asked to sign a document by my employer or anyone, and that person I'm signing the document for then wants to have complete control over what I'm allowed to do with that document, am I even signing in my personal capacity? Because in your personal capacity as an individual, your employer has no right to direct your personal life, right? And your personal decisions. So the only capacity they have to do that is in your role as an employee. And so If you're signing something in your role as an employee, are you even signing on behalf of yourself as an individual anymore, or are you signing on behalf of yourself as a representative of that company, which then would create this kind of circular issue around what's going on. I think you have to give the employee the ability to access that record, or if you're working with third parties as a business owner, you need to work out how are they going to have a copy of that record, or how are you going to have a copy of things that you're signing for other people. And if it is done digitally, then you just need to make sure at the time that you're doing that you're leaving with the record that you need, in exactly the same way that, back in the day when you were signing something on paper, you could have just taken that document and thrown it in the trash. And if you did that and it became a problem in 5 years' time, then that would have been a really bad mistake. Exactly the same of like making sure you've got that email, you've got that PDF or whatever it is, making sure you've got that should be part of your internal process of understanding the significance of what you're doing. Because if we're going to say that digital is equal to wet or dry or whichever, depends how long since you signed it, but whichever it is, then we have to think about it equivalently as well. And that has to be part of our personal taking ownership of that digital file in the same way that we would a physical file.
Yeah, you're right. But we have a community of people, a generation of people that are coming up into the workforce now who loosely provide their security and secure details, their PII, or don't care that companies have it because they grew up in a world where by default, as soon as I was given a phone or a tablet and I have an account on this thing, and I have an account on these different places for free, this is just the normal world that I live in. I have a free account on these in these apps. And so the trade-off is that the app gets to know a whole bunch about me and use that to buy and sell advertising. So when I get to an organization where I work, they're gonna have that kind of information on me too. And hey, it's okay. I know that sounds crazy, but I think that's something that is really hard to fight, because when you grow up a certain way, you see the world a certain way other than people who grew up at a different time. We know about having physical things that belong to us. We know about that. Matter of fact, the other day I ran into the store to buy some food, and I get ready to pay and I start slapping my pockets. I'm looking like, oh man, where's my stuff? I run back to the car and I have to go get my physical wallet that has my physical card in it. When I came back to the store, a kid was in front of me who was waiting on his food, and him and his girl, they get ready to leave and they're like, okay, that's going to be whatever it costs. He just swings his phone right over the thing. In order for you to swing your phone over the device, you had to have given over access to your bank accounts to another company. This is a very normal thing, but it's a convenience that you're used to, where it's swing right over the phone, digitally remove that money out of my account, make sure that I can see that it was your name who did it, and maybe I get a receipt or something inside of my email. That is my record. My record is all in the cloud. I don't have a physical receipt. And I don't even want a physical receipt, because guess what I get to do? Swipe my phone over the device and leave and get my food. So this is what I mean. This is the I look so old. I look so old.
It's okay. Someone was making fun of me the other day for having like an actual wallet that has actual like cards in it, and like even cash. I even have cash in my wallet. So like, I forget who it was who was making fun of me over Easter about this, but I was like, doesn't everyone? And they're like, no, we don't. We just have like one card and a phone, or even an Apple Watch. I think you could do it with. And I've just transitioned from wanting to sign something to tap in my card, so I feel like that's a big step.
Yeah, I've done the phone thing a few times, but I'm gonna more than highly likely, it's card. You know what I'm saying? It's rare that I'm ever gonna use my phone. Matter of fact, The times that I've used my phone is when I did have my card hooked up to my phone and I did not have my wallet on me.
Yeah.
But if I have my wallet on me, card is coming out and I'm swiping. And that's just a habit from how I grew up and what I do. And so the same thing from these new folks in a new generation, security is becoming less and less important to them. Real quick, did you see, I think the guy who used to own Twitter just blatantly threw out there, hey, why should we have IP laws or whatever? And I'm like, man, that's really where we're going? Like, we're thinking about throwing IP laws out the window because this thing caught steam and people were agreeing with him. And I'm like, who agrees with that we shouldn't have any IP laws? But whatever. I don't want to go down that road. But that's just where we're headed, Nick. I don't know how you feel about the future of security, but that's where we're going.
Well, the thing is, we've had this whole conversation about this topic, but just thinking about it, like, I don't have a copy of the agreement I okayed when I set up a new iPhone, or I got a new copy of iOS. I've practically no idea what that said. Like, Apple could tell me I agree to walk around on my hands for the next 3 months. I wouldn't know. So, I think you can only take it so far. We are being asked constantly to agree to this and agree to that and agree to something else. And foundationally, the only reason for it is this kind of CYA approach to running everything. If we get someone to sign 500 pages of something we know no one reads, then that's apparently okay. The one I love is when you go to the doctors. They have those little pads to sign, right? But they don't show you what it is you're signing. They're just like, you're signing this to agree to this and agree to that. How did that become okay? That you can implement a digital pad to sign something, but you don't show the person what the document is you're signing. Now, I'm sure you could say, hey, I would like a printed copy of that before I'm going to sign anything. Sure. But who has time in their life to do that every time they visit the doctor? Right. At some point, you've just got to submit to the system. But is the system right? Is it right that a company should have the expectation that they have this document that no one's really ever going to read, but in that knowledge, they're just like, okay, sign. We'll just give you a little box to sign in. There's something wrong with that system, isn't there?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't really want to get into right or wrong. I try to stay away from right or wrong, but I can't even push back on this one because, again, with the Comcast example, you told me I owned it. You said I could either rent or buy, so I bought. Where's my movie? You know what I'm saying? Where is my movie? I don't have Comcast anymore. So tell me where my movie is. You should I, when you leave Comcast, they send you physical versions of all of the movies you've ever purchased. Or maybe they send you a USB stick with the licensed copy of all the movies you ever purchased. Or maybe they send you an email where you can access an account of all the movies you ever purchased. Give me my movie. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm talking about. So, Nick, do we got time for one more? Another topic?
Sure.
Okay, so I guess you know what? Maybe we can't end this show without talking a little bit about AI. So I'm on LinkedIn today and I saw someone demonstrating how to use Copilot Recorder, which I believe is a desktop app that allows you to do things on your desktop. You can automate processes that are on your desktop by simply recording your screen. It was Anders. We can link to him in the show notes, but he, great guy, puts out a lot of really good information. I went under his comments and I said, hey, I like this. This is dope. I wonder if I could use it to capture the information about people who I interact with on LinkedIn. Can I just, after I've chatted with somebody, run my thing and say, go do what I would normally do, which is, maybe check out their profile, see the things they post about, gather up some information and see whether or not I want to reach out to them. Go do that. Doing that. But he was like, you need to be careful because of AI's automation laws. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. You're saying what I'm doing, the stuff that I'm doing, there's nothing wrong with that. It's automating it. That's the problem. And he didn't get back to me, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. So, yeah. So when I was relaying this to you, Nick, you said, yeah, you there's something to consider there. Like, are we making these things so easy that we are also making it easy for people to just break open a bunch of security holes, do things illegally, get themselves and or their company in trouble? Like, this is a slippery slope, if you will. Where are you at on this slope there, Nick?
Well, it's interesting because I think this topic relates really well to the last topic we were talking about, right? Because you sign up for services, you go out, and I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that, and there's this novel-sized set of terms and conditions that CYA every single thing that could possibly happen on this platform. And somewhere buried deep inside that is something about automating or scraping data or making more requests to the service than a normal human would make, or some language about this that makes it makes the idea of using AI, that's going to automate any part of the process tricky. And the difficulty is that for the vast majority of users, these things don't matter, because the vast majority of users aren't going to go out and work out how to use like RPA and then build themselves an RPA flow in Power Automate Desktop and go through that. I mean, some people are, but the vast majority are not. But as we make this technology easier and easier to access, the fact that we've agreed to these terms that may not be well understood by the entire audience of people who are working within them can come back and bite us. And I think this is a situation, you look at the RPA thing you're talking about is slightly different to the computer use capability that's going to come into Copilot Studio. But the idea of this is that you're going to be able to say to AI, go out and look at this website and buy me this, or get this information from there, and actually interact with the service directly by like clicking on things, not just by getting information, but by entering stuff, clicking on things, downloading data. And a point that I've made on this week is this is coming to Copilot Studio, and I see wonderful things that could come out of this for particularly small businesses that I work with, because very often the capability in a lot of kind of SaaS platforms to do automation, whether it's using an API or some kind of integration, ends up being part of very expensive enterprise plans rather than the more basic plans that businesses often start out with, particularly smaller ones. But very often that type of use will be prohibited within the terms as well. The terms will say something like, if you want to do X, then you have to have Y. So you're supposed to upgrade. I think there's a big question here, is Thurman in your business, you have one user because you're a one-person business, right? So you buy Microsoft 365, you've got your business premium or your E5 or whatever you choose, et cetera, you just buy one license. Could there be a point in the future where Thurman plus 10 agents becomes 11 seats that you have to fork out for? Could there be a point where, the work that you're doing with AI using Adobe or using QuickBooks or whatever it may be could be, hey, you need a few more users, not because there's any more humans involved, but just because of the volume of stuff you're throughputting means that you need more user accounts. And I think we're racing ahead with this stuff without there being a clear understanding of what the billing model for it is going to be. Not just for the service itself, but holistically the impact that it has. One more thing I'll say, I forget which podcast I was listening to. It'll come to me, but I was listening to a podcast where it was a video I was watching where people were talking about the fact that AI is going out and making an astonishing number of requests to web services. And so there are people who have set up free services on websites, whether it's to do information, business information, genealogical information, these types of things where there's information, but they're providing it to people for free. And AI scraping this data without any regard for what those licensing terms say or whatever it may be, has taken people from spending $50 a month on running a website to spending $500, $5,000 a month on running their website because of the amount of data. This is something that has to get worked out and has to be passed back. So even when we're thinking of companies, like HubSpot or QuickBooks or whatever it may be, there is a cost to these kinds of things. I mean, if you're a smaller entity, the cost is going to be more pronounced, but there is a cost to sending your agent out to do work on your behalf a lot quicker or doing more of it than you would do yourself.
Yeah, and it's a whole lot. It's like a lot of work. So I do want to go back a little bit to your point about how many seats am I paying for based on the amount of agents that I'm using. That is a very important thing to identify. Or maybe they don't have to identify it now. Maybe they'll identify it now and they'll say, well, this is how we do it. And 5 years from now, they just decide to change their mind. This is another thing that we are beholden to because these companies are so big and we rely on them so much. So it's like Microsoft is $1 trillion company and many businesses uses it. If they felt like upping their price to something a little ignorant tomorrow, it would be easy for them to do that and easy for them to survive after that. And that's, I don't know what to call that. You know what I'm saying? It's not even a monopoly because there's multiple companies like Microsoft who can do this. So if they decide, hey, we have figured out the pricing model for these agents and you got them rocking and rolling, and 3-4 years from now, they decide, no, we didn't do enough. And these other companies are charging a lot too. So we're going to up the price here. What are you going to do? You got all of this comfort, all this convenience with your agents. You got them pulling all kinds of data, whatever. And now you're stuck with this high price. So just another thing to think about when we consider, one, we're using agents, we're getting comfortable with, two, the companies that are providing these things, the power that they have to make a change. And then you just keep rocking and rolling. So something to think about.
I mean, you've already seen it, right? Was it Canva that changed their pricing model entirely? I may have got that wrong. We talked about it before on the podcast. But there was a company that its pricing skyrocketed because of AI. And I think you're going to see this happen. And there's going to be... I think this is a reason to really embrace AI now. Because if you are on the front of that wave and you're getting real benefit out of it, and say, you use 10 agents, but that allows you within your business to do the work of 5 Thurmans, right? And your profit and loss for your business shows that you're doing the work of 5 Thurmans. When Microsoft comes along and says, well, this is going to cost you double or cost you triple, you've got the capacity to absorb that. If you're a business that's on the back of that wave and you're not too interested in this, and at the point that happens, you've only just started thinking about using agents, you've got a couple of them going, but the decision is, okay, well, you're trying to do this, you haven't quite got it right yet, but it's going to cost you double, it's going to cost you triple because that's our new pricing model, then that change could put you out of business and you would have completely lost that opportunity to see the upside out of this. You would only be seeing the downside out of this. So I think that there could be an argument to say, well, at some point this is going to come. There has to be a reckoning about how much this stuff costs. Holistically, it's costing everyone. So how much this stuff costs. And the main people who are going to benefit from it are the people who are providing the shovels in this gold rush. That's, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google. But the other people who are going to benefit are the people who have already prospected the best land with the best gold reserves and have the deepest mines. And that's the people who have invested in making AI work right for them.
Yeah, that's a strong point. Very simple comparison is like, any social media platform that is huge today. If you learned it while it was kind of janky at the beginning, but you just kept chugging along, and now you've built up enough equity, social equity, to run a business on it, you're doing good. You know what I mean? You made the right choice to get in there while it was all shaky, but you made a bet on a company that was still able to still be standing today. We absolutely 1000% can probably hedge our bets that Microsoft and Copilot and the other big companies are going to be around for a really long time. So you are on the nose with your suggestion there, Nick. So I'm right there. I got my agent. You know what I'm saying? I got to get a couple more, but we'll be there. Nick, before we get out of here, what you got?
Go look at my LinkedIn. Go if you're interested in finding out how to get the best out of Microsoft 365 Copilot, then ask me.
Nice.
How about you? What do you got going on?
Nothing new coming up. So just follow me on LinkedIn if you want to see how best SharePoint can help you run your business or your projects. It doesn't matter. SharePoint is a very powerful tool, which also helps you prepare for when you do really get your feet dug in with AI. It's a no-brainer at this point. If you're paying for the Microsoft 365 suite, start maximizing SharePoint. If you want to know how to do that, just follow me on LinkedIn. I talk about it all the time. All right, Nick. It's a good episode, good topics. You know what I mean? Good conversation. Yeah, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.